Christmas ends. The Christmas season ends. In the Philippines, even if it is touted to be one of the longest celebrations, it used to be celebrated only starting December 1 up until January 6. But now, lately, in the past years, I think because you understand the cheer of the Christmas season brings, that's why it has been moved earlier and earlier. But truth be told, no matter how early you move it, there are some countries wherein there are Christmas cities. Diba, in Germany meron, in some areas in Europe meron, there's the Christmas town, that Christmas is all year round. But indeed, the Christmas season ends. And it usually ends, as I've said, in January 6. Why January 6? This is supposedly the last visitor that Jesus receives as a child, no longer an infant, as a child, and that ends in January 6 when the three kings supposedly visited him. It's either January 6 or the first Sunday after Christmas. But does Christmas really end? Or should it end? When the snow in certain countries, when the snow starts to melt, when Frosty the Snowman starts to melt, when the Christmas trees are down, when all your Christmas decors are back in their boxes, when you no longer see puto bongbong or bibingka being sold on the streets, does Christmas really end? What happens? What happens after Christmas? The Christmas season usually ends or usually is presented by the picture of a manger or the nativity scene. In most Filipino homes, you will be able to see this. As the weeks grow, we add to the nativity scene. Which character is now coming in? Which character is now coming in? But as you see, the nativity scene always has these three wise men, or the three magi, or the three kings. We even have songs depicting of who they were. In some tradition, they have even been named. Caspar, not Casper, the friendly ghost, okay? Melchior, and Balthasar. But allow me today to correct that notion that indeed there were three kings. There were three presents given, but there was no mention, nowhere in the Bible, that there were just three wise men who visited Jesus. And knowing how they were during that time, they will not travel by themselves. It was usually a whole entourage of people visiting or traveling across the desert. So today, with Matthew chapter 2, we will try to understand who these kings, who these magi, who visited Jesus, not as a baby, but already as a child. So the nativity scene, as we know it, has a lot of corrections to be done. There were not three kings, and they did not visit as soon as Jesus was born. They were indeed led by a star, but that story, as we now look at it and unfold before us, I hope we will be able to understand that we will get to know who God is and who Jesus is in the light of his visitors. I have entitled our conversation today as Revealer of Hearts, because that is who God is for us. That he reveals not only what is in our hearts, but the why of those reasons. We always try to control a lot of things, right? But we can't. We simply can't. I think most of those who know me, I am a control freak. I try to control everything. But recently, of late, as you mature, ibig sabihin tumatanda na, okay? As you mature, you start learning and understanding that you cannot control everything. But God is in full control of everything. We try to put in our hearts what we desire the most. Even Jesus said that we treasure what is in our hearts. Therefore, it is very important that the contents of our hearts will be aligned to what God has instituted for us. The year has opened. 2023 begins. And when a new year starts, what do? We review, we revise, we restart, and we try to put in new things. We try to live our lives newer. Not necessarily new, but a little bit newer than what it used to be. The baby Jesus, when he was born in the manger, did not receive the three kings then. And it was not even three kings. And today, as we go through the story in Matthew chapter 2, we will be able to understand as it unfolds before us amongst the people who will be able to meet up with Jesus or see Jesus as a baby and as a child. We will be able to understand as God reveals their hearts before us. So what happens after Christmas? What has happened after your Christmas? There are no more Christmas trees around you. Orchard Road has not been lit as much as it was before December. What happens after Christmas? Do our story of Christmas fade away as the season ends? And if there's one overarching truth that I would like us to embrace and be able to understand today, and I hope you'll be able to keep in your hearts through the season, through the year, it is this: the desires of our heart will determine the direction of our life. Desires are not wrong. The desires of our heart will determine the direction of our life. Where we go, we usually go to what we treasure. We usually go to what we like. I like to do this. I like to do that. I like to acquire this. I like to acquire that. And in so doing, every action we will direct to that which we treasure. They say that what we treasure in our heart is something that will be converted into action. You want a new job. What do? You study. You prepare for it to be able to present yourself good and right when you get an interview. You do things so that you'll be able to get that desire and fulfill that desire of your heart. And in so doing, the direction of our life, where we will end, is determined by the desires of our heart. Again, let me say, desires are not wrong. If we align it into God's desire and plan for us, then everything will be good and dandy. The desires of our heart comes ultimately with with a determination of where eternity will end us. Where will it bring us? Where will we go? And so, our lives will be directed towards that direction. And we see that very plainly in Matthew chapter 2. When all the characters, we see what they treasure in their hearts will be how their lives will be directed. And mind you, it is such a revelation that I hope we will be able to understand how to direct our desires through this year 2023. So, turn your Bibles with me to chapter 2 of Matthew, and it starts this way. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, here Matthew is dictating or telling us the time and the place where Jesus was born, stating the veracity of it. History books will reveal that indeed, there was a time when King Herod ruled. That was in about, this time was about 4 BC. And there was indeed Magi from the east who came. So, baby Jesus was born in Bethlehem at the time of King Herod. Time, place defined. Veracity, check. Magi from the east came to Jerusalem. Take note, there was no number given. Did not say 3 magi from the east came. It just plainly said magi from the east came to Jerusalem. And do you know what? During this time, magi or wise men or people who were in high-ranking positions would travel in caravans. They would not travel alone. Barkadahan sila. It's a whole community who would be moving from one town or one city or one country even. They say that maybe they came from Arabia or Persia. So we know more or less that hearing from the story of Daniel, they would have heard that there was something that was going to happen in the West during this season. And they asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star, and when it rose, we have come to worship him." They have presented their purpose in front of King Herod. Who was King Herod? A very good leader. He was very good that successes after successes, the economic welfare of the country was very good at that time. When the Magi presented themselves before King Herod and asking, "Where is he who was born King of the Jews?" To Herod's man, wait. King of the Jews. Hello, that's me. You're looking at him. But King Herod was not born as a Jew. He was appointed as King of the Jews because of how good he was as a leader. The economic welfare was just so great. Political stability was so good that he was appointed as the King of the Jews. So when the Magi presented themselves and asked him, "Where is the boy, where is the child born King of the Jews?" he knew in his heart that it was not him that they were looking for. But in his mind, he was saying, teka. Ako yun eh. Ako dapat yung King of the Jews. Even if I wasn't born then, you shouldn't be looking for anyone else except me. And knowing who King Herod was, people knew how bad he was every time he learned that there was someone who was going to usurp or who was going to take over his throne, to the point that he killed not only his wives, even his children, whom he thought was out to take the throne out under him. And the Magi presented themselves and said, the purpose why we're looking for him is to be able to worship him. And when King Herod heard, of course he was disturbed. And all of Jerusalem with him. You know why everybody got disturbed? Because he was known to throw fits of anger every time he knows that there is someone who takes over his throne. As I've mentioned, to the point of killing, kay asawa yan, kay anak yan, for as long as they're taking over my throne, off with their heads. Therefore, Jerusalem was so scared that if King Herod would be angry, there was something mean and really, really bad that he was out to do again. So what he did was he called all the chief priests and the teachers of the law and asked them, "Where is the Messiah to be born?" Obviously, King Herod also knew that there was going to be a Messiah who was coming, because he directly asked, and he knew who to ask, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, because he knew that they know best. That's why he came to ask them. Come. Tell me, where is the Messiah to be born? Directly, he said, where is the Christ, the Messiah, the Savior, the King of the Jews that these Magi have come to worship? Where is he going to be born? He's searching. He's desiring something. When the Magi presented themselves, the purpose was clear. Their desire was presented. They wanted to see the King of the Jews to be able to worship him. That was their desire. That is why no hail or high waters, no amount of sand dunes and sand storms did they face. No matter if they rode their camel, their donkey, or even if they walked their way, they directed and purposed and fulfilled their purpose because that was their desire. They wanted to meet the King of the Jews and to be able to worship him. On the other hand, here was King Herod, searching, desiring, wanting as well, to find out where this Messiah was going to be born. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law, without batting an eyelash, not even a moment passed by, they were able to reply right away in Bethlehem, in Judea, because they knew that at the top of their heads. They knew because prophet upon prophet upon prophet, the Torah read them that. Prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, they've heard of it. That there was going to be the Messiah who was going to be born in Bethlehem. That's why they were able to reply, in Bethlehem in Judea, for this is what the prophet has written. What was Matthew referring to here? He was referring to Micah chapter 5, verse 2. When Micah said, but you, Bethlehem, Ephratah was the name of Bethlehem before, though you are small among your clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient times. Micah was professing, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law knew that. They were able to quote what Micah was saying. When you read the book of Matthew, take note that he often references to what the prophets say. Why? Because he was presenting himself and telling the people that, hey, Jesus is the Messiah, the prophesied Messiah, King of the Jews. So after presenting to them, what did they do? Did the chief priests and teachers of the law do anything? They didn't. They just knew but did nothing. Therefore, we now know that knowing without doing anything amounts to nothing. Because the teachers of the law and the chief priests, they knew. Did they try to find out where indeed or if indeed the Messiah has been born, being presented by the Magi and being told, hey, we heard that the King of the Jews has been born. Where is it? Where is it that they've been born? Nowhere in Matthew or any book would say that the chief priests or the teachers of the law tried to find out. The knowledge of the Messiah coming was in their mind alone, but not in their heart. There was no desire to come and see for themselves the Messiah that has been promised, that they were supposed to be waiting for. There was nothing of the sort. Unlike the Magi who came to discover who that Messiah is and purposed to worship him. Their direction was they were being directed to the action that they wanted to do. Then Herod called for the Magi again, secretly this time, as if you can keep a secret in the kingdom. You have so many people around you. But Herod called for them secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. And he sent them back to Bethlehem and told them, go and search carefully for the child. And as soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him. Wow! King Herod too is desiring to be able to worship the Messiah, the one born King of the Jews. Is that true? We will later on find out that that is not at all true. True to form, King Herod was just devising a way to be able to find out and to be able to put an action into place. Because as I've mentioned, the desires of our heart will determine the direction of our life. Up until this point, King Herod's desire was to stay on the throne, to stay as a leader, to stay as a king. He wanted himself to be declared the only king of the Jews. Therefore, being presented with the fact that the Messiah has been born, the revelation that the King of the Jews has been born, now, King Herod is going to put his plan into action. After they had heard the king, after being dismissed, they went on their way, and the star they had seen before, when it rose again. That is why Bible scholars are saying it cannot be that the kings, that the magi visited Jesus right after he was born. Because take note, the star rose, and they saw it, and they started their travel. And the star got lost. That's the reason why they presented themselves to King Herod. That's why they came there, because they couldn't find the place anymore. They needed direction. The star was not there to direct them. But instead, they wanted to know, the King of the Jews has been born. All of the people in Bethlehem should know. All the people in Judea should know. How can you not know such big news? But they also didn't know. That's why they were saying from the time the star rose up until this time should have been about a year. Because the stars move in that way. They shine at this time, and then the next time they shine, it will be a year or so after, sometimes even years after. So does this mean that, Tita Barry, we can check the stars for direction? Because that's what they did. They were seeing the stars and seeking for directions. No. What Matthew is presenting here is that, no, even the skies and the stars and everything in it, God has control over that. Matthew is not presenting here that we should look at the stars and read our horoscope and check on whatever other divinities and other things. What Matthew is saying here is, no, God is in full control of everything. And He can use anything. He can use His creation to be able to show forth His glory. A lot of the things that are presented before us of how the beauty of things are, of the creation of God is, the only thing that you can do is marvel and see the greatness of our God. And this is the same thing that happened here. Because imagine, the star rose, directed them, and when it was no more, they presented themselves to Herod, and when they went again, the star shined again. And it did not only shine, it stopped over the place where the child was. Coincidence? No. It was God orchestrating and taking control of everything. And you know what the Magi felt? When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. It is not just joy, it was not just happiness, it was joy, 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 times 3 plus 1 to the millionth power. That's how joyful and ecstatic and happy they were. Emmanuel, God with us, is the only one who can give you this overjoy. Only Him. Not even the greatest comedian, not even Joseph, can give us a laugh. No, not even. Only Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, can give and present this overjoy. But does it stop at the end of Christmas? Does it stop at the end of the Magi visiting Jesus? Does it stop when the festivities are over? And they continue. On coming to the house, they saw the child and his mother Mary and bowed down and worshipped Him. They presented themselves to the king. It was already practiced that when a new king is installed, kings and magi's and other high-ranking officials would pay respect and visit them and present themselves with gifts. Because that is what you do, to pay homage, to pay respect. So they opened their treasures and presented Him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Great gifts. During that time, it was a practice. They would give, gold, lapis lazuli, linens of purple. Sometimes even if your country is known for big trees of good wood, they would present that. Can you imagine a caravan having those mga troso, the very big truck and long truck, and then there's somebody who's coming and presenting you with all the logs that they have. Beautiful. Nara, mahogany, oak, all of those things. But that was a practice already. What was different here? It was the mixture of the presents that was given. They were giving homage not only to a king, but to a prophet and the priest. And that was who Jesus was. Jesus is our king, our priest, our great shepherd, the one whom we should worship and give homage to. And that is what this magi did. When they came to know, when the desires of their heart was presented, they knew what to do. Their life was directed towards that. All their lives, no matter how much sacrifice they needed to face, the purpose by which they came was now served. They presented themselves, worshipped, and bowed down before him, and presented gifts and presents. This is what Charles Spurgeon has to say. Those who look for Jesus will see him, and those who truly see him will worship him. There is nothing that you can do when you come to know Christ, when you come to know God. You will definitely want to bow and worship him. You will definitely want to consecrate yourself and give a substance to him. For those who worship him will consecrate their substance to him. There will definitely be a gift that you will want to present. Is it your time? Is it your money? Is it your service? When you get to know Jesus, Emmanuel, the Savior, the one who has saved you, service is going to come naturally. You will want to serve. You will want to worship. You will want to bow down. The key is you have to know him. And as the Magi were earnestly looking and searching for him, they directed their life towards that. To bow before him, to worship him, and to present gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And they continue. And having been warned in a dream, the Magi, Matthew was referring to the Magi here, not to go back to Herod. They returned by the country. Nag-backdoor sila. They did not pass through Bethlehem anymore. They went through the back door because the angel warned them not to go back anymore because they knew that Herod was getting into fits already. And true enough, when they had gone, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. Dami na nila, BFF na sila nung angel. Ilang appearance na sila. I'm sure during the past month, you have seen how Joseph would constantly be spoken to by the angel, and the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, he said, take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child and not to worship him, not to bow down before him as he said, but to kill him, to kill the one who is supposed to usurp his throne once again. So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, taking the evening as his refuge, left for Egypt, and he stayed there until the death of Herod. And so was fulfilled what the Lord had said. Through the prophet, out of Egypt, I called my son. What comes to mind? You picture the baby Jesus being sent out to Egypt as a child because somebody wanted to kill him. Egypt, of all the places to take refuge, the one where they were bondaged, where they were enslaved, and yet the angel was telling them, go back there, go to Egypt. What comes to mind? Moses and the Israelites moving out of Egypt through Moses' help. As a child, Moses, during the time that he was a baby, also, the babies were wanting to be terminated, killed. Why? Because the Israelites were getting very big. They were getting huge in terms of population. So what did the king want them? Throw them into the Nile River so that all of them will be killed. And that picture is once more being depicted here. When Moses, as a child, as a baby, his life was endangered. But through Egypt, took him in to be able to prepare him for what? To be able to free God's people from slavery. And here, Jesus once more, as an infant, his life is endangered. And he is what? Asked to be brought to Egypt as a reminder to them. What did I do when you were in Egypt? God is saying, I took you out. If Moses took them out of slavery, Jesus too is going to take you out of slavery. Not anymore from bondage, from physical bondage in a country, but from the physical bondage of sin. That is where Jesus is going to bring us out of. That Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, is the perfect revelation of perfect reflection of Moses. When Moses released his people from slavery in Egypt, here Jesus is being shown, I will set my people free. God's redemptive plan is placed upon the hands of an infant child who was threatened to be killed, but God's protection and care was there. Why? To be able to fulfill. He's going to be killed, but not yet. He's going to fulfill God's promise that salvation and redemption shall come out of Egypt. I will call my son. And when Herod realized that he had outwitted the Magi, he was furious and killed all the boys in Bethlehem, 2 years old and under, and in accordance with the time he learned from the Magi. And this was what the prophet Jeremiah fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted. The same wailing and crying that happened when the babies during Moses' time were being killed was the same thing that was being depicted here when Rachel being said to be like the mother of the whole of Israel was being shown that every infant child, every boy child was being killed during this time. God was showing forth, as I have saved you, Israel, from Egypt, I will save you once again. But this time, I will save you from eternal damnation. Salvation is now here because Jesus, Emmanuel, has been born. What is the desire of our heart today? The desires of our heart will determine the direction of our life. And after Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph. Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who are trying to kill the child are now dead. He got up. Ito naman bilib ako kay Joseph. Lahat ng utos niya, lahat ng utos ng God, di ba? No questions. He just gets up and obeys right away. Pretty much like Abraham. Kamusta po tayo? Because when God gives instructions, it's for our good. Always. Never fail. And I think that's what Joseph knows. That every time God instructs him to do something, he will always follow. Because time and time again, he has proven the faithfulness of God, the goodness of God in their lives. No matter kabuntisan ni Mary, they were hopping on a donkey and moving to another city. No matter how difficult it was to move a baby and their mother, he would just get up and follow. And this is what he did. He got up and followed, but hearing that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father, and this son of Herod was even meaner and more despicable than his father, so he did not bring his family there. But instead, being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So it was fulfilled, as it was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. And that is why, even when Nathanael asked, is there anything that comes good out of Nazareth? There is. Jesus, that king born to be the king of the Jews, came from Nazareth. So what does this mean to us? What does it mean when Christmas is over, when Christmas is past, when the lights and the sparkles are gone, when the snow has already melted, when the cheers and the delight are over, when we are back to the grind, when we become busy with life, when all we see around us is work, 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 that we cannot anymore see the beauty that surrounds us. How do we respond to Christmas? What is your response to Christmas? When Frosty the Snowman melts, does Jesus' thought of being born, does the idea of Jesus being born in a manger that the Magi visited, has that also melted away? When the Christmas trees are packed, when the decors are back in the store, how do we respond to Christmas? The new year brings us new cheer. We always direct our goals into something that's new. Let me repeat, there's nothing wrong with desiring a better job, with desiring a good family, with desiring of getting married, with desiring of having children. There's nothing wrong with that. But may we always remember that the desires of our heart will determine the direction of our life. Each desire should be measured upon, is it God-centered? Is it directed towards God, what God wants in my life? And at the end of this journey, towards the end of this year, we will celebrate Christmas again. And that lightness and delight in our heart will be there again. Does it only have to happen during Christmas? That overjoy, does it only have to happen then? Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 29 says, "But if from there you seek the Lord your God, you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul." The Magi sought and sought and sought until they found him and gave him their worship and their gifts, presented their gifts to them. What is the desire of your heart today? That longing that we have, in spite of all the busyness that surrounds us, that longing has been planted by God to long for him alone. At the end of this journey called life, that longing, that emptiness that you have in your heart now, that desire that seems to be never being fulfilled, you know what that longing is? That longing is directed towards God alone. Because God has planted that in each of his children's heart. That longing to get to know him. There is no satisfaction, no salary so great, no position so great, no academic accolades so great that will even be able to match that emptiness, that void that you have in your heart. That ultimate desire that you should be able to fill is the desire for God. And may we all be able to align our desires towards him. It's a new year. I know the busyness, the pandemic, the economic situation just distracts and disturbs us. It just makes us so busy. It just makes us so unfocused that our relationship with God may have been sacrificed. How are you with longing for God? How are you desiring him? You know, one thing that we've learned is the more that you look for God, the more that he reveals to himself to you, and the more that you shall desire him.